I just want to give you a 2-minute pitch on what warp is, which is a very small one compared to all the things we have going on. The biggest thing since COVID is our website, and the website, which is now being worked on and is a constant nightmare for that reason, but everybody knows about that kind of thing already. It's a mix of fixed and active parts. And so there are places you can go, and for instance, there's a list of books and videos that Warp members have created, and there are more than 250 on the list. That gets updated every once in a while, so it's a pretty fixed thing. But we also have a lot of interactive things. We have 3 Zoom programs a month, and those are listed, and they also, the recordings of them are also there and available for anybody who wants to watch them anytime. So by now we have years worth of these programs, and they stay just as interesting no matter how old they are. All of our events are like this, where you can see everybody. We don't have any webinars yet. We may never, but at least at this point, you can see everybody. And in most cases, there is conversation, especially afterwards for the question and answer. In today's program, we'll have question and answer at the end. If you want, you can put your questions in the chat and somebody will read them. Or if you want, you can just speak yourself. We're glad to have you do that. And our biggest thing coming up is that every year we have an annual gathering. We've been doing it for 34 years now. We're getting pretty good at it, and it's pretty great and pretty exciting and pretty inspiring. And this year it's going to be in Ontario, in Guelph, and we're totally jazzed about that. It's going to be an all Canada show, so there won't be any American vendors or from any place else. It's going to be a special different layout, and there'll be Canadian vendors. We've got First Nations peoples doing presentations, and we've got a field trip day with 3 organized field trips, and then others that you can do on your own if you'd rather. And we're just very, very excited about it. So the registration for that will be opening up, we hope, within the next couple of weeks. Again, it's because we've run into these problems with the website. But be watching for it, and do join us if you can. So from there, I'm going to turn it over to Hetty. Yes?
Hi, yes. My name's Hetty Hollyfield. I'm on the committee that plans these monthly panels. So I would put a plug in if you have ideas for panels that you haven't seen or heard. Do let us know, because we're interested in having more. But right now we're going to hear about Madagascar, which I know nothing about. And so it's my pleasure today to introduce the first speaker, who is a conservation leader with a passion for positive change. Rachel Kramer is the executive director of the Conservation Through Poverty Alleviation International, SAPALI, a U.S.-based 501(c) nonprofit. SAPALI's mission is to enhance biodiversity, improve economic lives through arts-based social enterprise, and accelerate local innovations that offer potential for transformative change. They work with the Organization of Wild Silk Producers in Madagascar. They lead social impact enterprises that connects the traditional woven raffia and contemporary wild silk textiles to fair trade markets. Rachel holds a Master's of Environmental Science from Yale University's School of the Environment and a Bachelor of Arts from Brandeis University. She served 3 years in Madagascar in the Peace Corps, and her family's ties to the island go back to the late 1960s. So with that, Rachel, I'm interested to hear what you're going to tell us about SAPALI.
Thank you, Hetty. Not one of our speakers today, but I also wanted to acknowledge that Catherine Craig is on the line, who is the founder of SAPALI. So it's very exciting to have her join us today. I'll talk a little bit more about her in a moment, but wanted to say how touched we all are to have her here. I'm just going to share my screen for a moment. Let's see how this goes. Here we are. Everyone seeing all right? Perfect. So I wanted to thank you, Hedy. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Rocio, and everyone at WARP for inviting us to deliver this webinar. It's an honor to be here with Sarah Fee as well, who I've followed over the years, who is such an impressive expert in Malagasy textiles. Today, we're going to be journeying through time, which is really exciting. I'll be sharing our story of innovating wild cocoon silks on the margins of Madagascar's largest contiguous remaining rainforest. My colleague Lalaina, who's on the line, is then presenting how our shared initiative is helping to keep traditional Betsimisaraka Raffia weaving arts alive. And then Sarah's going to offer this wonderful historical context, speaking to the history of Malagasy textiles and offering a bit more perspective. So I'll introduce Lalaina. I'll speak first and then pass on to her. So Lalaina is beyond being a treasured friend. She is an accomplished artisan and designer. She is the lead of our Sipali Madagascar Sister Artisans Association based in Maro and Setra, which is in northeastern Madagascar. And so her role is facilitating the design of regenerative textiles. She's traveled to the United States as an ambassador for Sipali at the International Folk Art Market in Santa Fe, and also as part of Shop Objet's Global Artisan Project in New York. And her designs can be found at the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art in their store in Washington, D.C., as well as other museum stores and locations. And she's currently part of the Ibu Atelier program, and has also been a WARP grantee. So some of the textiles that you'll see today, we have WARP to thank for helping us as produce. So I lead Sipali, Conservation Through Poverty Alleviation International, which has operated for the last 20 years at the intersection of science and art. Our mission centers on sustaining biodiversity by strengthening local economic opportunities through regenerative systems. And Sipali Madagascar is our partner. Together, we run this beautiful social impact enterprise that's been named Tanana Madagascar. And in Malagasy, Tanana means hands. So the name of the enterprise symbolizes our close partnership. Now, the textiles that Lalaina and I will share with you today are stemming from the exceptional vision of two people. One of them, who I introduced earlier, Dr. Catherine Craig, is an American evolutionary biologist. And then Mami Ratsimbazafi, who is my counterpart in Madagascar, is a Malagasy entomologist. So we are the only ones in the world who produce Madagascar wild cocoon silk from multiple species of endemic moth. Our cocoon silks and contemporary woven raffia are featured in this beautiful new book that I just got a copy of, which is very exciting. That's called Threads of Time, A Cultural Journey, and I highly recommend it. So if you have the book and you go to the Madagascar chapter, you'll see some of our work featured in the innovations section. So through our social enterprise, Tanana, Sipali is connecting locally made textiles by our artisan team to fair markets. And we're unique in that each one of our pieces is both fair trade certified and also certified wildlife friendly, as well as just being very beautiful. So I see that a lot of colleagues who joined the line today, some have ties to Madagascar, some don't know very much about Madagascar. So I will just share a little bit about what makes this island, which is situated in the Indian Ocean off the east coast of Africa, so absolutely marvelous. As someone who studied anthropology and tropical ecology, I was anxious and keen to have my own time living and working in the northeastern rainforests because of the tremendous endemism of biodiversity on the island and particularly in the Northeast. So endemism means that species that are found here exist nowhere else on Earth, and it's a legacy of the long geographic isolation of the islands. So if we lose species, we lose them forever. We don't find them in other places. And because there has been significant loss of forest cover, up to 90% of the island's forests are now no longer present today, it's critical that we're conserving the remaining intact habitats. And while national parks and protected areas are an essential component of Madagascar's natural future, the people of the island are also in need of approaches that are collaborative and deeply connected to communities' needs and families' needs. And so, what this has taught us in the conservation community is that nature-based solutions that work for both people and wild species are going to be essential moving forward. And the work that we do centers on one. And at our core is silk. And it's very unusual for a conservation organization to adopt silk as its catalyst for bringing about its mission. But so we'll just take a moment to dive into that a little more deeply. If folks who have joined our textiles experts, I'm sure you are very familiar with domesticated mulberry silk and know that it comes from a single species of moth called Bombyx mori that is no longer existing in the wild. It has been selectively bred by humans for the last 5 millennia to prioritize its silk producing traits. And wild silk, very few people know about. It's radically different. Wild silk is the cocoon, Lepidoptera silk, moth silk, comes from the cocoons of species that live in wild habitats and are possible to sericulture, to farm, but they have very different traits and can be a core part of conserving their forest habitats. And it's not just us in Madagascar that have wild silks. There has been concurrent use of wild silk cocoons by indigenous peoples around the world at the same time as mulberry silk has been taken up in global textiles. They're just less well known. And there's a beautiful book that's called In Search of Wild Silk that I highly recommend. It's by Karen Selk, and it looks at the production of Tesar silk by indigenous communities in India and was as part of the inspiration for our work. And so the most known Malagasy species of wild silk producing moth is called Landibé, and you see it in the far right here. And Landibé, its scientific name is Barossera, the genus. And Barossera silk comes from this wild caterpillar that's only found in the disappearing tapia woodland scrub-like environment in Madagascar's central plateau. And it produces cocoons that have these spines in them, and you know when you touch them because they aggravate your fingers when they get stuck in your skin. But they have for many, many generations been spun and woven into traditional textiles by women, particularly in the Betsileo and Merina ethnic groups of Madagascar. And the resulting cloth is both functional and beautiful and sacred. So it is usually worn, I'm wearing one right now, as a shawl or a scarf by the living. And then it's used as a ceremonial wrapping traditionally for the ancestors in Malagasy ceremonies called famadiana. And we Kay and Mami and others who have been involved with our growth over the last 20 years have really wondered what are the other species of silk producing moths on the island that could be but haven't yet been used for their cocoon silks. And today we center on the 7 species that you see on screen, and they are both mysterious and beautiful, and their caterpillars spend most of their life cycles hidden in leaves and spin these wonderful cocoons that we now use. And what's so marvelous about them is that they are the sort of conduit through which we're working together with local farmers in communities around a coastal system on the margins of protected forests to restore degraded areas by returning host plants for these caterpillars that are native into traditional agroforestry systems. And the important thing is that these systems are providing food for families, they're providing cash crops as income, and they're also providing silk cocoons that we're increasingly able to aggregate and integrate into textiles. And so over the years, around 450 farmers have been trained in wild sericulture, and we now have a full-time team that Lalaina will tell you about of 20 artisans and technicians in Marlin Cetra. And then we have grants to train another 60. So just to give you some situation, we are in sort of the green heart of Madagascar, and we have programmatic work that I won't talk about today that's also wonderful under our nonprofit, where we support Poverty Madagascar to advance agroforestry, biochar, and wider training programs. And the method that is used is moth friendly, and it varies by species of silk. For our Sarantia cocoons that are in some of our most dynamic textiles, you can see the process that's followed on screen here. And the objective is to be able to create a system in which moths are able to complete their life cycles versus the traditional mulberry silk practice of moths perishing in the process of obtaining their silk. And it's possible to spin these new emerging wild silks. But when you do that, you lose the integrity and the beauty of their natural cocoon forms. And so Kay on the line and the team in Madagascar have devised a different approach for forming textiles from their silk. And it's to preserve those intact cocoons, to charcoal iron them with traditional irons, and then sew them into mosaic-like textiles where each cocoon is a tessera. And we use Singer sewing machines for our team and thread that's donated from a company in Georgia, and dyes that we source from a small dye maker in Maine called W. Cushing and Company. So it is truly a collaboration across oceans in creating these beautiful new regenerative textiles that we call Madagascar cocoon silk. So I just wanted to take a quick moment to walk you through I mentioned that the cocoons and these silks have a beautiful texture that invokes the natural environment. I want to show you some of them. So this is cocoon silk from Argima mitrii. And to me, when I see it, because it is silvery and porous, it reminds me of the sea foam on the Bay of Antongil in the Indian Ocean. And then Sarantia apollina, which I mentioned earlier, is this beautiful, lustrous, golden natural color. It's like Madagascar's golden fleece. It makes me think of the moon that rises over the Makira forest, and it is almost a shame to dye it because the natural gold is so lovely. And then Betsimisaraka, which is the first species that was the focus of Kay and Mommy's research, because it has a host plant that is early successional, grows quickly, has this beautiful brown earthy color. And then the papery cocoons of Calopisoma malagasica, they have the light penetrate them and they are just wondrous. So when these are combined, either by sewing them or by collaging and integrated with a matrix of loom woven raffia and card woven raffia accents, led by Lalaina and the artisan team, you get these beautiful mosaics that are illustrative of the biodiversity that supports them and also embody how we're sustaining natural wild species by creating textiles when so much of the textile space, at least at an industry standpoint, certainly does the opposite. And I just wanted to take a moment to celebrate how beautiful this tapestry is in its full form and quickly touch on our dye baths because every one of the textiles that you see that is colored either with natural dyes or with Cushing dyes that we source from Maine are dyed in these baths that we're very proud to say with support from seed grants now run on invasive water hyacinth that chokes local waterways and rice paddies and can be adapted together with banana glue to hold them together into a brick form and high energy density seeds that are incorporated with the biomass into these bricks. So the production of the textiles is not using forest depleting and mangrove depleting charcoal and firewood. And the resulting textiles are just so incredibly beautiful. This is my favorite, and it invokes the blue kua that you find in intact habitats, remaining habitats in Madagascar. And again, it looks as beautiful as the place that it comes from and as the incredible team of artisans and farmers who are responsible for bringing it to life. And with that, I will pause and would like to hand off to Lalaina, who is going to share with you this other beautiful dimension of what we do together, and that's preserving traditional knowledge and weaving change through raffia textiles.
Okay, so my name is Lalaina Raharindimby. Good morning, everyone, and nice to meet you. Now, I would like to share with you the unique and cultural significance behind our woven raffia product. Our weaving is rooted in the ancient traditions of the Betsimisaraka ancestors. They are specialists on their weaving techniques, so you want to preserve this heritage and passing down a rich legacy. Now, traditional weaving and handloom is disappearing among the Betsimisaraka people. The last women who still know the traditional weaving technique are now over 80 years old. So, to preserve this knowledge, Sepali, we invited two master weavers to train our team in traditional weaving techniques. Traditionally, weavers used a fresh banana chunk to hold the looms and wooden sticks. This means that the loom couldn't only be used for 3 or 4 days before the chunk had to be replaced. So after learning the traditional techniques, The team developed our own weaving loom that respect the Betsimisaraka weaving methods, but it designed for a long-term and sustainable use. Today, Sepali weavers use a loom that can be used indoors and last indefinitely. In this way, we preserve cultural heritage while adapting for the modern and sustainable production. Many modern weaving loom methods is prioritize speed and efficiency, but the quality is not the same. But our approach is to honor the meticulous artistry and goes in to each pieces. Our work, we start from the Raffia plantation. So we are carefully take care to the plant to ensure high quality of fiber, because they need to be take care if you want to have a good quality of raffia. After the tree plantation, when it's reach the maturity, that means after 7 years from plantation, we meticulously prune the leaves. This step is essential for promoting new growth and enhancing the quality of the fibers. After the pruning, we prepare the raffia by processing into fiber, which involves shaping, tying each fiber to be a very long fiber, which is crucial to prepare the raffia for the weaving. Then the weaving using the hand loom, hand woven loom, and at the end, we transform the woven textile into mosaic or longin for home decor. We use the shimmering technique to create the color pattern on our silk and raffia textile. These methods combine tie-in, fold-in, tie-in, and create a beautiful design. We learn the basic of this technique, shibori technique, from a foreign designer, and then we explored it further to create our own style inspired by Malagasy traditional culture. For example, our spider web design or the exo design. The spider web design comes from the web of Nephila madagascarensis. This is an endemic species of Madagascar who produce a very strong silk thread, and the thread is used by the queen, Malagasy queen. And one technique also is the exo design. We call it exo design. The X means moth. We created according to our work, and the design is cocoon. So we combine both into one pieces. And for the dyeing, we are using a lot of leaves to dye and to get many color, except for blue and red that we can't dye with natural leaves. So, for example, to have the brown color, we use lichen. For the blue, for the black color, we use rungan. It's a big tree leaves. And for the green, we use fleramen. All of those plants are an endemic species in Madagascar. So, and In each pattern, we bring together craft, culture, and nature. Repeat at all. So at the end, I want to extend my sincerest gratitude to the Sepali Madagascar team for their hard work and creativity that they did. Their dedication is invaluable. Without their support, Sepali would not be that what they are today. And I want to thank also Tanana Silk to their hard work to help us to accept selling all our product and give back all the money from sales to keep the project continuing. And then I would love to express our appreciation to WARP program for their generous funding, who helped us to grow and create job opportunities for many single mothers within our community. Your support had made a meaningful impact on their lives. And at the end, if anyone would like to learn more about our work or our product, please feel free to reach out both Sepali Madagascar and Tanana Silk. Email address and website information are provided below. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting.
Thank you.
And now it's our final speaker of the day is Sarah Fee. She works with museums and academia in both the U.S. and Canada. Her multiple roles include co-founding the Tandroy Ethnographic Museum in Betsimisaraka, Madagascar, a country she lived in for 4 years. Exhibitions in all 3 countries through the Smithsonian and the Royal Ontario Museum, where she is currently the senior curator of global fashion and textiles. Her textile focus is broad, beginning with spinning, dyeing, and weaving, and running the gamut to the textile and dress traditions of the wider Western Indian Ocean world. She has edited and written for numerous books, journals, and catalogs. Thematic interests include woven and printed textiles, textile trades, cross-cultural appropriations of cloth and dress, ceremonial exchange, spinning and dyeing technologies, and the history of museum textile collecting. So Sarah, I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. And just confirming that you can see my screen?
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, I'm just wrapping up this amazing presentation with just a quick overview of the historical textile arts of Madagascar. Not everyone is familiar with it, and this will hopefully help to contextualize the really innovative work that Sepali is doing. So just to start with a map again, I think really to understand Madagascar's textile traditions, we first need to understand its place in the world. It is the 4th largest island, so it's larger than Texas or France or Ontario, whatever your reference point is. And it's considered African because it lies off the coast of Mozambique. But as importantly, it lies in the Indian Ocean and at all these crossroads of maritime trade that you see marked in red here. Now, the monsoon winds of the Indian Ocean reverse twice a year, and that has enabled people to sail around it with some ease. And so actually, Madagascar was settled not from people coming from nearby Africa, but actually from Indonesia, some 6,000 kilometers away. So people from all across the Indian Ocean then after this, in intervening centuries, came to settle there. So the Malagasy language itself is closest to Indonesian, and so are many of the practices, everything from rice growing to some of the burial customs that have been mentioned. So over the centuries, many other people have contributed to the textile arts of Madagascar. From East Africa came both Bantu-speaking groups and Swahili groups. From the Arab world came priests, scholars, merchants, and some Islamic practices spread across the island and were adopted everywhere. And then finally, we can't forget from 1500 came Europeans, the French, the Dutch, the British. The most influential of these were the British, who were very active until colonization by the French in the 1890s. So there have been all these exchanges, and all of these cultures have left their mark on Malagasy textile arts. I always think of cloth as Madagascar's major art form. It's the one that is found everywhere around the island. And why would it become this varied and very developed art form? And I see three reasons. A big part of it is because of projecting and communicating a person's status. That is why so much love and attention went into creating cloth. The fact, as has been mentioned, that it is very important for funerary rites, which are one of the biggest ceremonies in Madagascar. And last but not least, because it's women's work. Women do almost everything in the weaving process and textile creation in Madagascar. So they put a lot of love and effort into everything that they created. So I'm just going to quickly touch on some of the major fibers, dyes, and cloth types across the island. And we need to remember that Madagascar has many microclimates and a really varied topography. So we have the central highlands, we have tropical rainforest, but we also have dry savanna to the west and the south. So there's actually quite a bit of variety. And everywhere historically, we know that people were using bast fibers to weave with. And I'm sure this audience knows what that is. I don't have to explain much more, but it's basically the inner bark of certain types of shrubs and trees. So the two on the right, hemp and banana stem, were actually introduced to the island, but on the left, we see some indigenous species that were used, and these are known locally as hafuta trees. And so that is something that is unique to the textile traditions of Madagascar. So as Rachel mentioned, wild silk is found in various parts of the island, and so is cotton. So in this more arid area to the south and west, cotton was really the mainstay of weaving, as well as the Barasara wild silk that Rachel shared with us that needs to be spun. It cannot be reeled like Bombyx silk. Bombyx silk was introduced to Madagascar in the 1820s, and sericulture developed quickly in the highlands, and it exists to this day, the creation of these very complex brocaded textiles using the Bombyx mori. And then, of course, there is the Raffia palm. And actually, our term Raffia comes from the Malagasy word Rufia. It's one of the few words from Malagasy that has made its way into the English language. So as Rachel mentioned, Raffia is indigenous to Africa. There are species on the continent as well as in Madagascar. And there are actually two traditions. To the west, among the Sakalava people of the Northwest, they also weave with raffia. And what they're especially known for and are unique for is the technique of ikat. It's the one documented place where ikat is used in Madagascar on the west. And then to the east and northeast, the Betsimisaraka and others have woven raffia into these striped garments. And I'll have just a little bit more to say about that. So if we focus just a little bit on the historic creation of raffia textiles amongst the Betsimisaraka, we have this wonderful photo series that I just found by René Linares at the Quai Branly Museum in Paris, which documented this in the 1950s. And talking to Lalaina and Rachel and my own experience there, in some ways, little has changed. So actually, it begins with men who historically were responsible for gathering the fiber, so climbing the trees to select these tender young shoot leaves that are used especially, and then bringing it back to the village. From that point on, it becomes women's work, and it's a very laborious process, and Lalaina's touched on some of this. It begins with peeling these strands that are only several feet long to remove the membrane. And it's actually this translucent membrane that becomes the fiber. You can see the pile to the left of the woman. And then you need to shred it with the metal comb that you see at the top there. And you can shred it into various thicknesses, however thick or thin you want your fiber to be. And you can see the woman, uses her feet to hold it and then shreds it. And then comes this very laborious step of tying it. So you've got to tie it end to end to make a continuous thread. And women use these tiny knives as they go to cut the knots. So you can't see the knots in a woven cloth usually. Now, dye plants, as far as the historic sources tell us, local reds, these local rubiaceae reds were used to dye raffia. And that is indigenous, these types, to Madagascar, but also introduced natural dyes, including indigofera and turmeric, were also used historically to dye raffia. But for a century now, synthetic dyes have been preferred. They're just that much easier. Just a few words, because I know there are weavers with us today on various looms that have been used amongst the Betsimisaraka, and they are also special to this part of Madagascar. Warping up, you can see on the left, I'm using the banana trunk, as Lalaina mentioned, to warp up. And then they use these very long looms because often they are creating very long panels of cloth. So these looms are continuous. You actually get double the length of your fabric, and you can use them inside because it often rains in the rainforest. So women are often weaving inside or outdoors. And I just love this little image of this little girl learning to weave on her tiny little play loom. There's also a very special loom that was used only amongst the Betsimisaraka, and that was a double heddle loom with treadles. And we think historically it was used to create for sale for export yardage. And it's a type of loom that's found throughout the Western Indian Ocean. So what were women making historically? Well, they were creating really two basic things. They made yardage that were then tailored into men's shirts, which are called a kanzupe. And what's always fun to me is just to see the changes over time of how fashions changed with them. So you can see from the historic example at the bottom and on the left, there's not much of a collar, but then the Field Museum piece above, which dates the 1920s, we start to see a collar. And then in 2017, when I had the chance to visit Anusi Biennale, you can see that collars are being added, pockets are being added. And so these smocks or shirts keep up to date. And then finally, women produce these amazing large sarongs or hip wrappers. And unfortunately, very few have been collected by museums. So we really do not have a lot of historic pieces. But you can see from these historic photos, these enormous, what must have been very colorful striped wrappers that these ladies are wearing. That would have been a huge part of their creative output. And I'm going to end it there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. That's really fascinating. Please feel free to either unmute and ask a question, or if you've got a question and you want to put it in the chat, then please go ahead and do that. And just one note is that we will be in Guelph, Ontario for our annual meeting, and one of our field trips is to the Royal Ontario Museum. And Sarah, I've got a question. What can we see there of the Madagascar textiles? What will be on display at the time?
Good question. Coincidentally, I took this job before I knew that the oldest surviving textiles, or most of them, are here at the ROM. So we've got, though, on display, we'll have one of these brocaded bombyx, a kutifana, is on display in what's called our AAAP gallery on the third floor. And if you're coming, that's where the majority of our textiles that are on display are. It's in our Gallery of Africa, Asia Pacific, and the Americas. That's mostly what we have out on display. So there we have one of these brocaded bombyx silk pieces. We also have 3 pieces by contemporary fiber artist Madame Zhu.
Thank you. There's one question. There was Diane asked, she heard that there was a destructive cyclone in Madagascar. Is everyone okay? Did you suffer any damage from that?
Yes, thank you so much. In Madagascar, in our area, it's not touched by the cyclone, but it's only in Tamatave who is very damaged by the cyclone.
So when we have extreme weather events like this, they can often interrupt the flow of products that are made by artisans in the Northeast down through this port town of Tamatave to the capital of Antananarivo, where they're then air freighted out. But yeah, we are very concerned for friends who are in the Tamatave region because there was a very, very significant effect from this latest storm.
So does anyone else have a question? If not, Rachel, I've got a question for you. And that with the history of the organization going back 20 years, what kind of success have you had in terms of conservation in areas? Do you have any measure of that, the impact to the Native communities?
Yeah, thanks, Hetty. That's such an important question. Measuring your impact and evaluating your impact is one of the most critical things that any conservation initiative can do. We have been collecting data just in the last year and a half on our latest programs, and we have numbers from early years. Our community-based work has really waxed and waned. There was some challenge during the COVID years where it was a little more constrained. What I can tell you is in our last year and a half, we have worked with local farmers to plant 40,000 trees, of which 5,000 are raffia palms in nurseries that are locally established and locally managed. We try and measure the school fee equivalent of the income that's generated through purchasing of wild silk cocoons and raffia each year. So in 2025, we were able to get to farmers 240 school fee equivalents. We are now training 60 farmers in biochar production from invasives. Or when I say we, I want to make sure I'm clear. Poverty Madagascar is training 60 farmers and 60 village-based artisans so that they're able to participate in the economic benefits of this process without having to leave their families and communities. So our core numbers are trees in the ground, our growing number of wild silk producing species that we're exploring, and the number of benefits that communities are receiving economically. And supporting education is the measure that we've chosen to illustrate that because it's so vital.
Scott asked, will the organization be back at IFAM?
That is an excellent question. Lalaina has been to IFAM in the past. We are hoping that we can have a presence again. We're keeping our eyes on 2027. So we'll be submitting an application, we hope, and would love.
Not this year.
No, not this year. Not this year.
Next. Several people want the title of the book and suggested maybe we send a follow-up email about and when the recording's available, and they've asked that the title of the book be included in the in that contact information with your contact information because there's quite a bit of interest in the book. I want to give a special shout out because to Phyllis. Phyllis actually, this is her brainchild to have these panels. And she's no longer involved with them, but we've been doing them now we're coming on, this is the 6th year we're doing them. So, and it's been so exciting to hear all these stories from around the world. So thank you, Phyllis.
If we're giving shout out, could I give a few too?
Sure.
I see Dosey Lewis on the call today, and Dosey is a brilliant artist and was a wonderful help to developing a number of the designs that Lalaina and the team are still using today. So hi, Dosey, and thank you. I also see Sherry Allen on the line. Sherry is one of our most important people for the Tanana social enterprise. So she helps us with getting every piece now of silk and raffia that comes from the team in Madagascar ironed and trimmed and boxed and ready for when they're ordered. And then also Kylie Schmidt on the line, of course, who has been our general manager for Tanana for the last going on 3 years. And has just been such a tremendous, tremendous champion in growing the enterprise. And Kylie also has a background in Madagascar, so we're grateful to see her on the line as well.
Thank you. Diane wants to know what you're wearing. It's absolutely fabulous. So where can she buy it?
Well, you mean the blue Barosara silk shawl?
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, this is Kylie, if she would like to unmute, can tell you a little bit about it. This is woven by the Luvasua Cooperative in the plateau, and I'll mute so Kylie can share a bit more.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, that is a beautiful Borosera wild silk scarf. It is hand woven by a group in the Central Highlands of Madagascar that I've been working with for 20 plus years now. And it's made up of about 100 women, and they do everything by hand, spinning the yarn with drop spindles, dyeing, and then weaving on very simple floor looms. So yeah, it's a very traditional art form for Madagascar. The traditional use in their area was exhumation cloth. And then over time, they started losing that market, unfortunately, to imported cloth that was cheaper and easier to make. So then they had to transition to targeting more of like a tourist market and making what they call fitafis, which are like small shawls and scarves like Rachel is wearing. So they're very durable, they're beautiful pieces, and you can find them on tananasilk.com. So
the link is in the chat if people want to see it, and we'll put that in the email that goes out as well. So thank you. Does anybody have other questions? And Dosey says hello to the whole team.
I'll just pipe up briefly. My name's Dan Perlman, and I just want to thank all three speakers for telling us the history, the present production, and most of all, Rachel, the biology of all of this. So thank all three of you. This was just a marvelous presentation.
Is that one of the mosaics behind you? One of the silk mosaics behind you?
Yeah, I stole it from the Tanana website about 45, 50 minutes ago.
Wow, it looks good.
Oh, I see Dosey is holding up something as well. Oh, what a beautiful cushion using the XO pattern raffia. Is that right? Oh, how lovely. Very nice.
I want to say a shout out hi to Dosey also, who I haven't seen in 35 years, maybe. She used to work designing with Pueblo de People out of Houston, and I think Mayan Hands out of New York. And I ended up living in Guatemala and working with Mayan Hands after Dosey's time. But her name is still floating around. Good to see you.
Well, there's another request to make sure all the URLs are put in the follow-up email so we can shop. And if there aren't any more questions, I guess we can end. The one thing I'll say, next month we have we're having our annual gathering in Guelph, Canada, in June. And as a, sort of a introduction to weaving in Canada, we're having next month's panel will be on March 19th. It will be at 1 p.m. The announcement's out on the website now, and it's Canadian Weaving Traditions Today. So we'll have 3 people speaking about modern techniques in Canada. So we look forward to seeing you. And thank you very much. It was a really fascinating program. And don't forget to donate to Sapali.